Good luck.
If you remember Speed Racer as fondly as I do, you're probably already humming the theme song. That familiar chanting, pumping up the image of Speed as the ultimate invincible road warrior. Then there's the Mach 5 leaping off a cliff, the car spinning out from the bottom of a canyon, and Speed shouting about winning the race, while Pops can be heard off-screen hollering about responsibility.
Go, Speed Racer! Go, Speed Racer! Go!
That's the Speed Racer American kids grew up with. Fast-paced dubbing, limited animation, and a hero talking a mile a minute over footage that often didn't move nearly as quickly as the dialogue. But switch the tape to the other side of the world. In Japan, that same car, that same family, and that same collection of races were presented under the title Mach Go Go Go, and the guy driving the car was Go Mifune. The Japanese series premiered on Fuji Television in April 1967. Its American adaptation also began to appear through syndication later in 1967, although exact premiere dates differed between local stations. The underlying animation and story material remained largely the same, but the American version changed names, rewrote dialogue, altered musical and vocal presentation, removed or softened some material, and gave the series a distinctive new identity. Today, we're going to be looking at those differences and discovering what makes the American version distinct from the Japanese version, despite both stemming from the same manga and animated production. So sit tight and enjoy the race you're about to witness. Oh, and hey, welcome to our YouTube channel. Names and identity. Go Mifune versus Speed Racer. Let's begin with the most obvious change. In the original Japanese, our guy isn't actually named Speed. The main driver and protagonist is actually named Go Mifune, and the surname is generally understood as a tribute to Japanese film superstar Toshiro Mifune. Go's first name is also part of the title's Japanese wordplay. Go can refer to the character, it resembles the Japanese pronunciation of the number 5, and it functions as the English command to go. The title, Mach Go Go Go, therefore plays with the hero's name, the Mach car, and the idea of racing forward. The yellow G on his uniform represents Go, while the M on his helmet represents Mifune Motors. When the American rights were acquired by Translux, and the series was adapted under Peter Fernandez's supervision, Go Mifune became Speed Racer. The name tells a young American viewer almost everything they need to know about the character before the opening credits have even finished. There's also a later American retcon introduced through Now Comics, in which Greg was given as Speed's actual first name, and Speed was just his nickname. That explanation helped to account for the G on his shirt, but it wasn't part of the original 1967 television adaptation. From Japanese television to American syndication. Mach Go 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 premiered on Fuji Television on April 2, 1967, and continued until March 31, 1968, with a total of 52 episodes. In contrast, Speed Racer never originally belonged to one national American television network. Translux distributed it through syndication to local stations across the US, which was a common way for imported animation to reach American televisions during this time. This meant broadcast times and premiere dates could differ depending on the city and station carrying the show. This had bigger implications than you might think. A program created for a scheduled Japanese TV slot could be treated very differently after being sold independently to stations across a much larger country. The American version had to work within the constraints of local scheduling, commercial breaks, broadcast standards, and the expectations of children's television syndication. Dub script. Rapid-fire dialogue versus the Japanese script. Here's where things get really interesting in terms of just how different these two versions felt. The American adaptation frequently added narration, explanations, repeated reminders, jokes, and even extra dialogue over moments that were quieter in the Japanese version.
Hold it right there. Grab that pineapple, men.
These changes came primarily from the rewritten English script and vocal performances rather than major alterations to the anime. Peter Fernandez and the small English language cast had to adapt Japanese scripts to match existing mouth movements, timing, and scenes. The process required them to rewrite dialogue so that it fit the available footage and remained understandable to American children. This created a show with an almost insatiable appetite for dialogue. The characters are constantly telling us how they feel, explaining the stakes out loud, repeating information, and reminding viewers that Racer X is secretly Speed's brother. Shh, don't tell. The Japanese version isn't exactly silent or radically minimalistic, but it doesn't fill every available second the same way the American version does. That rapid delivery became one of the most recognizable qualities of the American Speed Racer. Pacing and story openings. Japanese delivery versus American build-up. Both versions followed the same basic framework for most stories. Many adventures were structured as two-part episodes that ended on cliffhangers, sometimes quite literally. That cliffhanger structure carried directly over to the American version. What changed was the way that each scene was framed verbally. The English dub would add explanations, narration, and emotional reactions over the same footage, which made sequences feel longer, louder, and even more melodramatic, even when the underlying animation remained almost identical. The Japanese version could allow a reaction, vehicle movement, or suspenseful image to carry part of the scene. The American adaptation was more likely to have a character explain the danger, identify the villain, repeat their objective, or announce what the audience was already watching. Therefore, the visual pacing is substantially the same, but the vocal pacing is not.
Kinda, let's go.
Come on, Speed, you better hurry.
Hold it. Sorry, but no one's going anywhere.
The American dialogue makes the program feel faster and more frantic, even though the animation itself hasn't suddenly gained more frames. Violence, crashes, and danger. How much was softened? Speed Racer is a series about motor racing and the dangerous lifestyle attached to it, so what happens when you bring a change to the central attraction? The answer is that the American adaptation retained a surprising amount of the original danger. Car flips, collisions, explosions, gunfights, fistfights, and apparent death remained common. Speed Racer wasn't transformed into a completely harmless racing cartoon. However, individual shots and lines were sometimes removed or rewritten. Scenes involving gunfire, physical attacks, and explicit death imagery or harsh dialogue can be found in the Japanese version, but they're shortened or softened in the American adaptation. The American script would also sometimes avoid confirming that a character had died, even when the animation made that outcome obvious. Therefore, it's too broad to say that the American version simply turned every crash into a moral lesson or softened all the impact frames. The more accurate difference is that the American adaptation retained much of the action while selectively reducing explicit violence, death references, and emotionally harsh dialogue. Music and sound identity. Japanese pop jazz versus American heroic branding. The original Japanese production uses a mixture of orchestral action scoring, jazz, pop, lounge, and dramatic music associated with Japanese TV during the 60s. The Japanese theme was composed by Nobuyushi Koshibe, with lyrics credited to Yoshiyuki Yoshida. The American production retained the theme's fundamental melody, but rearranged it and added new English lyrics. Peter Fernandez is credited with the English adaptation, while Danny Davis and musicians and singers associated with the English recording are commonly credited with performing the famous version. The result became shorthand for the whole show. Go Speed Racer Go is arguably better known in the US than any individual episode, so the basic melodic identity remained, but the presentation changed. The Japanese theme introduced Go Mifune and the Mach 5 through Japanese wordplay and racing imagery. The English adaptation transformed that melody into a direct heroic chant built around the newly created name Speed Racer. Characterization differences. Go, Speed, Pops, and the family. Once the show crossed the Pacific, the family's names and history were altered in several specific ways. Pop's racer was originally Daisuke Mifune. Japanese planning material identifies Daisuke as having been the captain of his wrestling team during his student years. The English adaptation sometimes described Pops in grander terms, including calling him a former world champion wrestler. The family business also changed names. Mifune Motors in the original Japanese became Racer Motors in the English version, bringing it into line with the family's newly assigned American surname. Later American comic books would add full names that were never established in the original TV dub. We already mentioned the Now Comics adaptation, which said that Speed's real name was Greg, and it also came up with the name Lionel for Pops, but those names belong to a later American comic continuity rather than the original Mach Go 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 or the 1967 English adaptation. These changes didn't radically alter what the characters did within the animated stories, however, they do reveal a clear trend. The American franchise continued filling in explanations for visual details and identities that had originally depended on Japanese names and wordplay. The westernized feel. why Mach Go 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 already translated so easily. There's a genuinely interesting historical point here. Compared to other Japanese cartoons airing on American TV at the time, like Astro Boy, Kimba the White Lion, Gigantor, and Marine Boy, Mach Go 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 was grounded in a recognizable obsession with cars, speed, racing, spies, and international adventures. Tatsuo Yoshida's concept was itself influenced by Western pop culture. Sources commonly connect Go Mifune's appearance and racing imagery with Elvis Presley in Viva Las Vegas, while the Mach 5's gadgets recall James Bond's Aston Martin DB5 in Goldfinger. Both films were major Western pop culture landmarks interpreted through a Japanese manga and animation studio. Thus, in a roundabout way, the American localization didn't have to completely remake Mach Go 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 into something Western, it amplified qualities that were already present. That may help to explain why Speed Racer became one of the most recognizable Japanese animated exports of its time. Mach Go 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 1997 versus Speed Racer X, a second wave of differences. The changes didn't end with the original series. In 1997, Tatsunoko would produce a remake that was also titled Mach Go Go Go. It aired on TV Tokyo and ended after 34 episodes, despite reportedly being planned for 52. The remake changed several parts of the original story. The family name became Hibiki, the older brother's disappearance was connected with a Mach 5 test drive accident, and the car received a new feature called the Safety 7. An English-language adaptation titled Speed Racer X was produced by DiC Entertainment and Speed Racer Enterprises. It aired on Nickelodeon's short-lived Slam programming block in 2002. The English version reused classic American names like Speed, Pops, Trixie, and Racer X, even though the Japanese characters and family business had been renamed for the remake. Only 13 episodes were adapted into English. A legal dispute between DiC Entertainment and Speed Racer Enterprises prevented the American adaptation from continuing. This shows that the Speed Racer vs. Mach Go 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 pattern didn't happen just once. The 1997 series created another layer of renamed characters, rewritten continuity, licensing complications, and incomplete American localization. Sub versus dub, when the English voice makes it feel like a different show. There's a whole category of fan discussion relegated to comparing the original Japanese performances with the English anime dub, and Speed Racer is a perfect subject because there is such a noticeable gap between the two different versions. When the subtitled Japanese original is compared with the English dub, it becomes immediately apparent how different the delivery can be. The character designs, painted cells, frame rate, and much of the editing remain the same, but what changes is the tone, pacing, terminology, and intensity.
I'm your old friend. Why are you betraying me?
I'm not your friend, Dr. Leone. I couldn't be the friend of a man who makes such a...
The rapid-fire delivery of the American voice cast would become one of Speed Racer's defining features, and it heavily influenced what many American viewers thought anime sounded like. It also became an easy target for parody. The Japanese performances sound more measured in many scenes, while the English cast rushes through exposition to match the footage and fill available silence. That doesn't automatically make one version better, but it does mean that the same animation can feel like a noticeably different program depending upon which audio track you hear. Race framing and themes, competition, honor, and revenge. This is one element that largely survived translation. Themes of betrayal, revenge, family loyalty, sacrifice, and dangerous competition came from the source manga and the Japanese animated stories themselves. They weren't inventions of the American dub, these ideas translate directly into the television episodes. Speed sometimes sacrifices personal victory to help another racer. Racer X repeatedly risks his safety and secret identity to protect a younger brother who doesn't know who he really is. The difference between the versions becomes more visible when we examine the exact dialogue used to frame those relationships. Side by side, episode comparisons have found that Daisuke Mifune's confrontation with his eldest son sounded harsher in Japanese than Pop's Racer's corresponding English dialogue. In the Japanese version of an early Racer X storyline, Go privately remarks that the mysterious racer feels like an older brother.
He's going to win the race for his brother. Go for it, Speed!
The English adaptation changes that line, removing some of the emotional foreshadowing. Other Japanese lines concerning death, family conflict, and punishment were also occasionally rewritten into less severe English dialogue. However, this doesn't mean that the American show removed all the difficult content. The English version of Speed Racer retained gunfights, explosions, crashes, physical violence, organized crime, and apparent deaths. What it sometimes softened was the explicit wording surrounding death or the emotional harshness of family conflict. That makes the difference more subtle than simple censorship. The same event can remain on screen while its emotional meaning changes through the dialogue. Visual and animation style. The same limited motion framed differently. In terms of the underlying hand-drawn animation, the Japanese and American versions are largely the same. They use the same cells, character animation, painted vehicles, close-ups, and limited bursts of movement, but viewers perceive that limited animation differently depending on the soundtrack. The show would establish a distinctive visual identity despite its production limitations. Rather than relying only on lateral side-to-side movement, it frequently used tight facial close-ups, dramatic compositions, speed lines, repeated backgrounds, camera movement across static artwork, and vehicles sliding through the frame to suggest greater speed than the actual frame count could provide. These techniques work in every language version. In the American dub, however, the same limited animation is supported by a barrage of dialogue, narration, vocal reactions, and sound effects, which kept the viewer's attention moving even when the image remained relatively still.
What's he doing to him?
The sound would fill the spaces where the animation could not provide constant physical movement. Speed Racer used that technique more aggressively than the Japanese track in many scenes, helping create the frantic reputation of the American show. When all was said and done, there were basically two adaptations built from the same animated program. You get the same Mach 5, the same central family, the same Tatsunoko animation, and the same core collection of 52 episodes. However, after the names were changed, the scripts were rewritten, the dialogue accelerated, the themes adapted, the characters reframed for American television, and some of the material removed, the experience became noticeably different. On one side, you've got a Japanese racing adventure built around Go Mifune, the Mach 5, family drama, international crime, and dangerous competition. On the other, you've got a frantic American cartoon whose voices and theme song helped define what an entire generation thought anime was. So which of these differences caught you off guard the most? And after watching this video, are you interested in seeing the original Japanese version, or have you already watched it? Let us know down in the comments down below because, well, we love Speed Racer and we loved making this video, and we'd love to make more stuff like this. To that end, don't forget to like and subscribe because that's the best way to see more content like this. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and we'll see you next time.